What I wanted to focus on is a project that I'm starting to really organize about, which is trying to get full religious freedom and liberties for women in our religious structures. And that is a daunting task because it's also a global task. And so when you were talking about fighting, it is a fight. It's a long-term fight. Women in my Lutheran denomination have only been ordained for 50 years. And as many of you know, there are many religious structures that don't give women full religious liberty. So the first thing is, how to define what full religious liberty means, because a lot of people will say, well, I have a power structure in my religious view, but it means agency. So full agency for women and a moral voice for them and a power voice in their structures. And to sort of reconstruct, this sounds abstract, but matriarchal and patriarchal structures in religion. So who can be at the pulpit? Who can be conducting a ritual? Where do we sit? How are our academic voices reflected? How are women spoken up for in the moral framework? So religious views, sacred views are really at the heart of many worldviews. So we were talking about just before this about the rights of people to come into the United States, and the recent Congress eliminated domestic violence as a reason to seek asylum. And that is a denigration of women's human rights. And we need women in religious leaderships to have the moral authority to call that out and to say that it is an equal danger as to any other political or economic danger. So it's really a tough fight. And I believe it's the main fight of this coming century, that we need to reconstruct our sacred worldviews, meaning what kind of metaphors do we use for the sacred? Energy, is it female? Is it masculine? Are there a variety of metaphors? Are they patriarchal metaphors? And what place do women hold in that power structure? So, and how are they able to speak up for their reproductive rights? And that, I think, is a critical piece that we have seen in this election, which is that women's reproductive rights are denied by religious patriarchal structures. And it isn't abstract at all. So there are policies that are global policies in which women's ability to choose their own path in reproductive rights are denied, are not funded, are sort of taken as a political weaponizing. So what does that really mean? It also means that women have to be upfront. I remember in my very first time as a minister, I was giving a presentation and I was saying I didn't wear my shoes and I was in front of a bunch of kids. And I said, well, what am I missing today? Because I was going to talk about walking. And this little boy raised his hand and said, you're missing a beard. And I was like, of course. And then on my way out, a little girl said, well, can men be ministers too? So what we see visually, how we construct our sacred world, is critical to the way we see our moral choices and the way we understand what's important and what's to be valued and what's to be used as a political weapon, because religion and power and politics are always bound together because they are able to work together. And in countries where there's a democracy and the separation of church and state, that is a critical piece of what creates checks and balances over absolute power and the denial of women's rights and the hierarchy of the choices. In some theocracies and other religious and political structures, the less liberation women have in their religious freedom, the more that they are oppressed. I think it also opens the door to stopping a dualistic sort of male-female dynamic in the symbol system. And it allows women to be more than mothers and spouses, or in the frequent literature, the idea of handmaiden. It allows them to have full potential as human beings. And what does that mean? It means that we have many chapters in our life, and we need to have women in front of us as moral authorities and sacred symbols in their many chapters, as young adults, as women who have children or not, in our many ages. We live till 65, 85, 95, and our role as matriarchal figures sometimes is put in the back burner as we progress into our more powerful roles as wisdom seekers and women who understand what the power dynamics are. And so we can break those sort of cycles and create a a role for LGBTQT and other sexual expressions. It's really critical to start to do this with the support system, to bring them together, to sort of help people understand how important the moral and sacred roles and metaphors are for just our constant sense of justice and the way that we construct our society. And so finally, it's such a big thing to have women seen visually as symbols and to be able to articulate what full agency means for them in terms of the moral views and in particularly in what justice actually looks like in a way that we work our way through our laws and our roles and our structures and our institutions. Thank you.